So here's another Meerschaum, what do you call it, refurbishing or fixing or renewing, whatever, process, update. And of course you can see this female figural head Meerschaum that I got. So my uncle found this at an estate sale. Of course this piece of metal is pretty gross, pretty tarnished. And the mouthpiece that came with it, the stem, was this. So it's like really worn, really kind of gross. And looks like it's acrylic. Pretty certain it's not actually amber. Yeah, it just looks too synthetic the way you can see right through it really clearly and everything. So it's probably not actually amber. And of course this Turkish guy, this figural Meerschaum that I fixed earlier, its original mouthpiece was this. This one's in a lot better condition, still has a bit of a button on it, but it's pretty gross. So just had to get rid of it. And of course this is a mouthpiece that I just bought on eBay. You can find them on eBay, Etsy, etc. They just have a lot of these very similar amber colored mouthpieces. And the fitting for this one is a little bit different. This is the standard fitting where you have a thing that screws into the Meerschaum, a thing that screws into the mouthpiece, and then in between you have kind of another mortise and tenon type fitting. But for this one, I tried something a little different. So this stem is a Missouri Meerschaum Summer Shimmer Elf. If you look up Summer Shimmer Elf, you'll find it's just a normal Missouri Meerschaum cob, except it has this red acrylic stem to it. And the acrylic stems on these are, they're just normal 3mm drilled. And so what I did was I actually just cut, or actually drilled into it, the right drilling that you need to fit these funny little tenons that these Meerschaums come with. It might be Delrin, I don't know exactly what material it is. And you see that what I did is I just simply drilled out with a like a rotary tool. I just drilled out enough space that I can fit this little fitting that usual Meerschaum pipes come with. They're like these little plastic fittings, right? And I was able to just stick it in there and then use super glue. For this specific one, I tried super glue. So that was like the first thing that I did was put super glue in there, put the fitting in, and then after that I took some charcoal, so some activated charcoal, which I just have a whole bag of activated charcoal, and I just threw that in there and I put some more super glue and I mixed it up. So that way it binds to the charcoal or whatever, and it creates a kind of a hard material. So that's what I tried with this one, and it just didn't have any residual smell, which was nice. So oddly enough, even though this figural head I thought I would never smoke, it doesn't have any smell to it. Basically all the work I did is up here, so I don't think that area is going to get heated up much, so I don't think it's much of a health hazard to be using super glue up here. And of course, with this Meerschaum, like I've done with all three of my Meerschaums that my uncles got me from estate sales, I just ream them down almost down to the stone, but not really. I guess I shouldn't say stone because I don't think it's technically a stone, it's just a sedimentary organic deposit. But kind of reamed them down to there using just sandpaper. So you just wrap, I was wrapping about 320 grit sandpaper around my finger, like a small piece of it, and then just going like this. Some people use dowels or pens apparently. I was just having trouble with that, just getting enough control. And obviously it makes your finger really sore, but I just find it as a little bit better process. So I go in a counterclockwise and a clockwise direction, both ways. I've noticed that it seems to kind of tear up the air passage or whatever the draft hole opening at the very bottom of the bowl. And I've noticed that these Meerschaums are all pretty, I don't know if you want to call them sloppily drilled, but they're not drilled like what you'd usually see with a good drilling in a briar. It's almost as if they went down and drilled and then just drilled one more time in from the bowl to just meet the drilling. So there's kind of a big cavernous area down there that's not that precise, which is interesting. So it seems that, all these Meerschaums that I'm getting so far are pretty easily repairable. This one didn't even require any super glue or anything. It already had just about enough threads to catch this Delrin, I guess what you might call a Delrin mortise screw-in replacement. You'll see how the tenon-esque screw-in replacement here, you can actually unscrew this, I think, from this mouthpiece. but the Delrin mortise replacement just screwed right in, and I actually haven't been able to remove it, which is nice. And it's interesting that I didn't even really consider this whenever I'd hear people talk about being careful when you twist off and on the mortise and tenon of a briar pipe. I've never really heard, or for some reason in my head it didn't click, that even when you're removing it, you're trying to spin it clockwise. So every single time you're spinning it, you're always spinning clockwise, and that's even more important, obviously, with Meerschaums. For some reason, it just didn't click with me at first, and I was trying to remove everything counterclockwise, like you would with a screw, because you usually screw things in clockwise, and then counterclockwise to unscrew, unless they're threaded in an opposite direction for whatever reason. Interesting stuff. And finally, there's this pipe. This is the second one I worked on last night. This one, I worked on a little bit of it this morning, which was just drilling out the hole a little bit thicker, or drilling out a bigger hole. So I just had to use the correct drill bit for it, and simply used a drill. So I just put the drill on the ground and just very carefully drilled it in little by little, kept testing it. I wasn't really going for a perfect fit because I don't have an actual rig or a lathe set up for getting a very precise hole drilled, unfortunately. And these are just kind of, I don't know, in a sense they're inexpensive, just cheap, broken Meerschaum pipes. So, I mean, you can still buy like an unsmoked Meerschaum for what, like $65 or something, if you find one like an estate that's been unsmoked or just not smoked very much, but it still has all of its connections intact and everything. So this is my other project. This one, I wonder if I can still smell it. Not really, actually. So a lot of it's gone away. I used JB Weld on this one. So this pipe, I used super glue and charcoal. This one is just JB Weld. I'm gonna remove the mouthpiece here. So you can see how I cut down this little fitting. And I've explained this before, but when I bought this mouthpiece, this acrylic mouthpiece for a Meerschaum pipe, I think it was like $17 with tax and shipping and everything. And it came with a little bag filled with this piece, the tenon, the screw-in tenon, and the screw-in mortise, and which was really nice. So then I was able to basically have spare parts. And so with this original mouthpiece, it actually used a fairly similar sized hole. And if I look into the acrylic really carefully, it's clear acrylic or lucite, and you can actually see there's threadings in there. So my theory is that someone had a proper screw-in tenon and mortise setup for this pipe also, kind of a smaller one since it's smaller, and yet they super glued it into this, into the screw-in area of this and this. So there's super gluing going on apparently. And what I saw in there was almost like a wood reed, almost, or some kind of organic reed that was sticking out of the top of the stem, or sticking out of the top of the stummel of the Meerschaum anyway. So I just went in there and basically dremeled and rotary tooled out everything. So what I really should have done is I should have worn a better mask or something. There's a lot of dust coming out of that. So in the future, I think I'm going to probably wear a respirator mask for this kind of work, because I don't know, you're basically burning and turning into powder a lot of gross stuff, including Meerschaum. I don't know how good it is to breathe in Meerschaum. But this pipe also is, I think it's smokable. I think I'm going to leave it for a week to let the, whatever the JB Weld epoxy resin does, I think it has to set or something. But I want to leave it for a long enough time that it just doesn't taste bad. Yeah, I'm just not really smelling much of it anymore. It smelled pretty bad. Of course, JB Weld has that strange burnt chemical smell when you're mixing it and setting it. But I think it turned out pretty good. Another interesting thing about this, you can't really see it very well. You can see how there's a clear part of the lucite or acrylic stem. I'm guessing it's lucite or acrylic. It functioned a little bit different, I'm starting to file it and stuff, mess with it, drill it. It smells a little different than most acrylic I've worked with, so who knows, maybe it's Bakelite, don't really know. But you can see how there's a little translucent area here, so the very translucent area, oh there we go, you can see it even clearer. That translucent area is actually where I filed down the mouthpiece. So there was pretty much no button. The button was very non-prominent, And the way this pipe, I would be clenching it, I use my first method of clenching. With this method of clenching, my teeth are equidistant from the button. With this method, I couldn't really clench very well. It was rolling around and it was a rounded bite zone. So it was very uncomfortable. I was very afraid of dropping it, and even just clenching it for fun, not actually smoking it, of course, because it was kind of unsmokable when I got it, because it was falling apart, of course. It felt uncomfortable. So now it feels a little more comfortable. It's not perfectly comfortable to me. That's my clench number one. My secondary method of clenching, my overbite method. This way, clench is good too. The thing about Meerschaums is they're so damn light that you don't really need to clench them very well. I've noticed that, like, you know, with heavier pipes, having a really good clench bite zone is pretty important to me, especially if I'm lunting. Even if I'm just sitting down, I usually just have it clenched almost the whole time often. I'm usually not holding on to the pipe in my hand. And if I am, I usually have to have my hands crossed or something because I want to be more relaxed and my arms crossed. And of course this secondary overbite method of clench, which is kind of the only way I like to comfortably do it on my right side. My teeth aren't really set up for the normal equidistant clench. This way, on the right side. And it feels nice. Personally, I wish that the stem was maybe like a couple centimeters longer up here, because I prefer there to be about this much straight, flat, or just a very straight area, region, for the stem length. So that way it doesn't interfere with my lip. Like with this one, if I clench or my secondary method, you can see how it pulls down on my lip. On this side, not really, which is nice. But on my right side, it's very prominent. It's weird, we're like, most people are minutely different. Their left and right sides are minutely different. For me, it's kind of like they're pretty exaggeratedly different. Like my left earlobe is like much lower than my right earlobe. My right eye is lower than my left eye, etc. And you can really see that when you clench, especially with your teeth. Even though I have like relatively straight, like I was blessed with perfect teeth. Okay, maybe not perfect, but yeah. So it clenched really nicely, kind of cool. And I was able to use the original stem. The downside, I mean the sad thing that I noticed about these Meerschaum replacement stems is that they all look the same. They all look like this amber color. And I don't know, when I first started smoking pipes, I thought this was the ugliest, most disgusting thing I've ever seen. This color, what do they call it, like a tiger or like a, I don't know, it's just like different colors of white. Like, I don't know, to me it looks gross at first. But nowadays, I don't know, it's interesting to me, I like it. But when I first looked at it, it was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. That was back when I thought bent pipes, I couldn't smoke them because I thought you like had to have a beard or something to smoke a bent pipe. Like people think you're a weirdo if you're like baby faced and you're smoking a bent pipe. And it clenches really nicely because I was able to bend it perfectly the way I want. So it's just about enough length here. If I had like a centimeter or maybe even a couple more millimeters of length before the bend, that'd be nice. So in the future when I buy these replacement stems, I'll probably buy a slightly longer one so that way I can go up to here, do an almost 90 degrees bend, and have a little more straight. You know what? Yeah, I think, you know what, this is perfect. This is good enough. Maybe if I went with a longer stem, it would look a little awkward, or it would probably put the weight a little further away from my face, who knows. But of course with this pipe, the stem is much longer. It's kind of demi-warden shaped, or demi-warden length. So I think it'll work probably, or we'll probably be smoking it and holding it the same way we'll with a straight pipe. And what I like about this Summer Shimmer Elf stem, I guess it's too windy to do that one. What I really like about the stem is it's relatively straight. I could bend it again with a heat gun, but it's straight enough that I can hold it like this. So I can hold it with these different pencil grips and positions that I like to hold these longer straight pipes that don't have any like interference or anything between the stem and the shank, which is nice. It's a little bit uncomfortable, I think, holding on the stem with any kind of bend at all, these straighter pipes. like with my other church warden, my Pimpernel's church warden, I've kind of unbent it on purpose, so it was a little more bent, made it a little bit less bent, because I do prefer having just a straight I don't know, stem that you can position your hand at different positions on. If it's bent, it's kind of hard to tell where the bend is just without looking at it, and it's nice to not have to look at the pipe as you're holding it, etc. Holding it in these different positions. And it's interesting, this is brand new stem, this metal, which I have basically sanded to a polish, and then you have this very old, very patinaed, very worn Meerschaum. The final interesting thing is I can't say for certain if this is actual Meerschaum. It's interesting because there's places that I've sanded on purpose. So I sand it completely to try to get rid of anything that's on top, and then I wet my hand and I touch the Meerschaum material, and it doesn't really stick. So it makes me wonder, is it possibly an African Meerschaum that just doesn't stick like block Meerschaum would? Because block Meerschaum, it's supposed to stick to your hand. Like with this pipe, I can feel the stickiness a lot more. This is, of course, unoiled or unwaxed raw Meerschaum, and it sticks, but for some reason it doesn't do with this one. And here are the cases. This is the case for the small bent Dublin. And it makes me wonder, I should probably do a little bit of research and see what kinds of cases they used in different eras to try to date them to some degree. With this pipe, there's no make or anything. Same thing with the other one. But this little snap enclosure still works. So it's interesting. It's an actual functional case, even though it looks kind of old and looks kind of gross. And it makes me wonder if the green felt or velvet is laced with some nasty heavy metal. And of course this pipe came with this case, but it's going to be for the most part unusable unless I remove the stem every time. And this case also is a little bit grosser, so I don't know if I really want to use it or not. And these just look so nice. They look so nice out in the open. So, and a final little thought is, recently I've been considering like making my own pipe stand. You'll see a lot of these pipe stands. I think I'll make more of a video on it, but they're pipe stands where you basically have all the pipes and they have the bowl down and they look like this. They're just a whole bunch of in a row like this. And I think this angle is doesn't look very good for a pipe. Like, it's not the best angle. The most flattering angle is here, side view. And so I want to be able to showcase the pipes from side view. I don't want to like showcase them like this. You can't really see the pipe at all. So I don't really like that kind of the pipe rack style. And I have that, and it's really compact, which is nice. And you can just set it all in one place. You can move them because they're usually little stands that just set on a table or a shelf or whatever. And so I want to make a way that I can kind of showcase them like this. And if you go to like a lot of pipe shops, they have these things, these little rubber grommet looking things that you go like this on the shank or stem of the pipe, and it's on a big pegboard wall basically. So you just have all the pipes like that. So I want to make something kind of similar to that, but actually is good looking. So probably it'll require me to take little strips of leather, like this leather ballet tray thing that I made, and take these little button rivets, these tiny little button rivets that, that way I can just kind of button rivet onto maybe a big piece of wood and have like the other end of the button rivet on there. So you like rivet on, or you just button on little pieces of leather that are the right size per pipe, and that'll hold the stem, and then maybe underneath the bowl have another piece of leather that's tacked onto the wood backing that'll hold the bowl. So place to hold the bowl, a little piece of leather. I don't know, I looked it up on just looking up pipe forums, and there's one picture of someone who did something similar to it. What I didn't like about their design was they use an actual raw wood backing. And there's something about like raw wood and then briar on top of it, which is just too much wood pattern, just wood pattern on wood pattern, and the briar doesn't pop, it doesn't show up well. So I'd prefer to have like maybe some painted, like just painted black, or something else, maybe like some kind of velvet, or maybe even just a leather, almost like hanging wall mat, and then you rivet in the leather pieces to that. Because leather, I think, is far enough away from the texture and appearance of a pipe. Maybe if it was a black leather that had been washed and rusticated or something, that'd be kind of nice. So, interesting stuff. Peace.